Bubby.
Bubby.
That was a great way to start this whole thing.
Oh, absolutely.
To have a visit from your son, and to be called by my proper name.
Yes,
it was great.
Yes. As everyone should know, my son, the first time, well, it wasn't the first time he'd met you, but it was the first time he could talk and and seen you. You know,
he just gave me a name.
He just called you Bubby all day. And the very next day, he said verbatim, Father Sam. And I asked him, I was like, were you just calling him Bubby because you wanted to? I was like, do you know who Bubby is? He was like, yeah, Father Sam.
I think what we have is, well, this actually will lead us into our topic. Your son is a troll.
Yeah, he was. He was trolling you. He was trolling you.
He was
There's
trolling.
No doubt about it.
100%.
And he was enjoying it.
Oh, yeah. And he knew it. And our interaction today proves that to me.
Yes. My son got on the mic here. And called Father Sam Bubby very clearly.
It was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing.
So he's a troll. How does one define a troll?
That's a great question, actually. I am, other than doing this podcast and the fact that this podcast goes out onto the internet, I don't interact with social media. Yeah. So I don't actually know
you must be so much healthier.
I am so much more at peace. It was not hard to get rid of. I had already started to decrease my usage for over a year before I finally got rid of it. Mm-hmm. But I don't miss it at all. I don't in any way, shape, or form miss being on social media.
I mean, when we're talking about social media, just to be clear, we're not talking about podcasts, so you should keep listening.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Podcasts are
but I would say
media.
that YouTube falls under social media, right? And it's because there's the social component to it. Or it's not even really social. It's like parasocial, you know?
Well, this is what happens when you have a podcast, right? People listen and there's a feeling of closeness. I listen to podcasts and I feel like I know the hosts of the podcast because I listen to them so regularly. So I feel this sense of being very close, and I have never met these humans in my life. And I need to realize that I do not, in fact, have a relationship with them, even though I listen to them all the time.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and I would argue that so a lot of the background from this is personal experience, right? But I've also recently listened to 2 separate episodes of Pints of Aquinas with my good friend Matt Fradd.
My personal friend. With whom I have a parasocial relationship.
Exactly. And he talked about social media with John Eldredge and with Eric Ybarra. Obviously, not together, right? 2 episodes. And they both made great points about it, which is that I think are worth addressing here as well. One is, because it's a parasocial relationship, Eric Ybarra talks about being someone who, he's an apologist. Mm-hmm. So the content he creates is almost intrinsically divisive, you know, in the sense that he's making an argument for a particular point, and if you disagree with him, you might get angry, and you're looking at a computer screen, so you're not even talking to him, you know? Right. And so he talks about how he had this shift in attitude towards viewing fellow interlocutors on the internet as video game characters, right? In the sense that what I'm experiencing right now is not real. The comment section is not real, you know? And how that was a major shift for him, and that really played a role in bringing a certain amount of peace to him. The thing that John Eldredge says that I've been thinking about since I listened to it was twofold. The first was there's statistical evidence for the rise in anxiety and depression that corresponds with increased social media use, right? And so following the instruction to know something by its fruits, it seems somewhat damning, you know? But the other thing is that John Eldredge makes a comment about how one of the reasons Christians use social media is because we don't want it to be a totally, quote, unredemptive place. We want redeeming content to be online because people are there.
And that's
and
where
so there's a
that evangelical thrust of Christianity comes in so importantly,
right.
because you're right. We should not look at a place that is devoid of the gospel or devoid of the presence of Christ and leave it that way. We should want to bring the light of Christ into everything that we do. So there is a value to using social media for evangelization. However, there's also a really important way in which we want to protect ourselves from the negative elements of what's out there. And it's very important to do that too.
Right.
Without just creating like a bubble for ourselves. And maybe that's the biggest problem. Now that we know the things that we know about social media, several years back, there was this push and it was actually encouragement even to priests, like, beyond social media, use social media and use it as a platform for evangelization. Right. And it was a great idea. And I was actually really very much on board with the idea. However, over time, we've come to understand a little bit better what's really going on behind the scenes and the way that algorithms work and the way that eventually whatever social media platform you're on starts to curate certain content and certain things that you're going to see, ads, other accounts, the things that are being posted that are similar to the things that you kind of want to hear about. And you end up, without any intention, being in a social media bubble. Like, people started noticing this with Facebook.
Yeah, you find yourself in an echo chamber.
Yeah, people started noticing this with Facebook. And here I will demonstrate my age, because that's also the only social media that I was ever really a part of, other than for a very brief time using Twitter and Instagram when I was working in vocations. And I eventually gave up on it because I didn't understand how either of those platforms worked. Like I could not figure out a way to use those platforms appropriately or like well for the sake of the ministry.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, what started happening is people started noticing, first of all, that people who they used to see their updates in their timeline, they stopped seeing. So they're no longer seeing people who they know, the classmate from high school. They're no longer seeing them in their timeline. They're wondering why. They're seeing more ads that are geared towards certain things. And they're going, what the heck is this? And you end up in this. It's because the algorithm is programmed to just push certain things at you. And that's it. And that's not a good way to do things. That's not a good way to engage.
No.
And eventually that starts to hurt your ability to use the platform for actual evangelization purposes. I cannot use this platform to evangelize if only these 5 people are ever going to get my content.
Right.
There's a certain limit then to the way that these things really work and really work well.
Yeah.
It's not that they can't be useful. It's just.
Right. So, I mean, it has colored my approach to Veritas's social media. Which is, so like, as you know, I'm a great big fan of your Daily Gospel Reflections. Everybody listening to the Tangent. Buddy. If you do not follow the Daily Gospel Reflections with Father Sam Kachuba on Veritas Catholic Network, you can find it on the Veritas Catholic Network channel. You should. And the thing is, because it's like, what is it, right? It's a 2-minute, like, short reflection, short homily, basically, right, on the gospel from that day's mass. But what, like, beyond the fact that I think that you do a good job.
Thank you.
The reason that I think it's so effective is because, like, what does social media accomplish? Like, it is an echo chamber to an extent, right? And so when we post things on social media, I would argue that for the vast majority of the people that see our content are already Catholic. Like, they're receiving things that they've already signed up to see. And so I look at the Daily Gospel Reflection not as a chance to convince someone who's like a staunch atheist. It's just to help educate someone who's wants to be Catholic, And so, like, that particular show in its length, but also in its subject matter is, in my opinion, like, incredibly effective at that, Yeah.
I think that you deserve a lot of credit because you take what I make and then you're able to edit it so that it is in fact 2 minutes. Because sometimes I go up to like 2 minutes and 20 seconds and you somehow manage to cut out that extra, like, you trim the fat really well. And I admire that. I really do.
Yes, thank you.
So
thank
well done. And I think you probably speed me up just a touch on sometimes,
Not always.
so that I fit
Not always. Admittedly, I've just leaned toward making it 2 minutes and 5 seconds lately. But it's okay.
I apologize for making your job harder than it needs to be.
It's okay. It's okay.
But
it's all worth it.
On that note, right? I think you're raising a really good point, which is that on the one hand, we have social media. If we're trying to use it as a tool for evangelization, part of our problem is that the way that the algorithms work, the way that the stuff behind the scenes that we can't see and that we don't understand because somebody else is pulling the levers to control things, may not actually be pushing that content to the intended audience. If I'm trying to get out there for the sake of being a voice in the public square, crying out that somebody might just happen to hear and be willing to listen to.
Right.
However, there's on the other side, there are those who are looking for this particular content.
Yes.
And who want it and who can benefit from it. And so in that way, you're absolutely right. Social media used for the sake of communicating to a particular audience, a targeted audience. Social media used for the sake of promoting something to the people who are in fact looking for it, it can be very helpful, especially when the thing that you're trying to promote is something as good as the gospel. If you're out there trying to promote violence to violent people, if you're out there trying to promote hatred to hateful people, please stop. We don't endorse such behavior.
Do that. Right.
But if you want to promote the goodness of Jesus Christ and his mercy to people who also want to do that, then there's no end to the value of that kind of activity.
It's also interesting too, though, because I think that the larger you get, the more people you can reach, the broader of an audience you can reach. So like, I think like someone like Jordan Peterson, right? Like massive, I guess political, but social figure, and he often, or at least often enough, has people on his show that he disagrees with, And so, like, he's actually able to reach, maybe people of two separate persuasions because he's able to have that kind of guest on and maintain a legitimate and cordial conversation. But at the same time, maybe it's like he's actually only reaching people of one persuasion, which is those who want to know the truth, like those who are seeking the truth actively. So it is like, it's an interesting platform because all of them platforms, but it's an interesting, medium because, well, I hesitate to say it does more harm than good, but it seems to me that it does, and therefore there's that tension. I'm curious, have you ever read a book by, I think his name is Marshall McLuhan? It's called The Medium is the Message.
I've not read the book, no.
Have you heard of it or no?
No. I've heard heard the sentiment of the title.
Yeah. Right, yeah, fair enough, right? So this is, I've personally not read The Medium is the Message, but I have read Nicholas Carr's The Shallows, What the Internet is Doing to Our Brains. And I actually decided to read that because we interviewed Jason Craig, and he brought it up a couple times.
Yeah.
And he calls on Marshall McLuhan's The Medium is the Message several times. And, yeah.
Well, there's on Netflix, there's a documentary, The Social Dilemma.
Oh, is there? Okay. So
The Social Dilemma it's fantastic in terms of illuminating what's going on behind the scenes. And now that particular documentary is several years old. So it's not necessarily current, but it does give you a sense of some of the things that are operative. And I think
it's like the foundation.
Yeah. Where this can be dangerous. Look, just because something is dangerous doesn't mean that it can't be used for good. And just because something is dangerous doesn't mean that we can't interact with it. But it does mean that there have to be guardrails. There have to be procedures. We have to be careful, right? There's a way to use even dangerous things and to use it well. Most of us don't interact with, for example, the danger of electricity all that often. Because our homes and the places that we go are generally very safe. Yeah, we have light switches. I don't have to connect the wires myself, right?
Yeah.
But there's also a reason why on any big transformer box, there's warning signs that say danger, high voltage. There's a reason why those things are kept locked and why only the power company has access to them. There's a reason why we don't go trying to fix the telephone wires ourselves on those outdoor telephone poles. And there's a reason for that. And the reason is that it's dangerous, and only somebody who's properly trained and knows what they're doing should be doing it. There's also a reason why you don't rewire your own house. There's a reason you call an electrician. It's because even though we can use electricity safely, there is an element of danger with it. So I think the same thing is true when we're talking about things like social media. Social media has some significant dangers inherent in it.
Yes.
Just because it can be dangerous doesn't mean that it can't be used and can't be used well. It just means that there has to be a tremendous amount of awareness. Now, where it's difficult is that level of awareness, or that level of like training and knowledge about how to properly use the thing is often not present. So you have something that would require, I don't know, some kind of preparation being used by people who have never been prepared. In a certain way, it's like giving the keys of the car to a 10-year-old and saying, good luck, kid.
Right. Yeah.
It's not a good idea. We're putting the child at risk. We're putting other
merge.
people at risk. Exactly.
Right,
It's not a good thing. I think I go back with all of this to like the early days before social media had taken off. We had the introduction on news articles.
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm laughing at the early days.
The early days. Yeah. Going with, look, I remember a day before we had the internet in my house.
Yeah.
And
I don't.
I also remember a time when the only way to get on the internet was to occupy the phone line, so that if somebody needed to call the house, they couldn't get through because the line was busy. I remember these things, and I remember them well, Matthew. Before, like,
I don't.
Before the
I don't know, but I don't say that as a teasing you that you're older than me. Everybody knows you're older than me.
Yeah.
I just mean that's a perspective I don't have.
We would look at you and say that you're a digital native.
Yeah.
You grew up with these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But there was this time, when AOL came out, right? So this got everybody email, and you could go into chat rooms and talk to people.
Yeah.
And you had your screen name, and your screen name might be part of your name, but chances are it was more like your favorite hobby plus the year that you were born, or just some goofy thing that you came up with. So there were all these ways that people were now starting to interact, but it was always behind this still relative anonymity. And so you had this ability to kind of stay hidden in a certain way.
Right.
Well, then as news outlets started publishing their stories online, somebody, and I don't know who it was, but at some point somebody invented this thing called comments, where you could go in and you could leave a comment. Now, I believe that the comment section is without question the invention of Satan himself. I think that it is from the pits of hell, and I suspect that the person who invented it has either done great penance already for having committed that crime, or will need to come to an awareness of that, because ultimately the comment section has become one of the worst things, and such that we now have this term called trolling. The comment section
which
became
is
this place
the best
where
thing
people
that's ever come to the comment section.
At liberty to not engage. They felt that they were at liberty not to engage in meaningful dialogue and discourse and try to get more information or try to understand an issue better, but that they were well positioned to just say whatever they wanted to say, no matter how destructive. And if you think that I'm just being judgmental or something, Saturday Night Live has done sketches about people leaving comments on the internet and how insane it is, and kind of challenging this whole idea that people are trolls and they're just being jerks online and they shouldn't be like that, and it's wrong.
Right.
So if a secular outlet like Saturday Night Live and I, Catholic priest that I am, are able to find a common ground and agreement on this thing, I think I'm in good shape, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you. And I guess when I say that trolling is the best thing to ever hit the comment section, I just mean it's like, for the most part, when it's done in a very clearly silly nature.
Oh,
that's the only time it can be licit. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you're actually trying to raise, bring anger about in people, that's like the evil troll. But the troll who just like writes silly little stories on serious posts,
Yeah. I am a huge fan of The Office. You see Dwight Schrute behind me there.
Exactly.
And on YouTube, I follow The Office YouTube account.
As you should.
Because I just like getting these clip collections of videos of different things. There is somebody who in the comments on just about every video will just write, just a reminder, Ryan started the fire, which is a reference back to the very beginning of the show. And it's so stupid. It's such a dumb thing to bring up, but there's somebody who does it. That's a troll that I can appreciate.
Yes, right.
That's the kind of comment that is constructive, is helpful, it's funny, it's entertaining, it brings a little bit of joy to my life, and that's okay.
Right.
But very often what happens in that comment section, now whether we're talking about the comment section of a news article or of the stuff out there, or if you're using social media on a personal level, the comments that people can leave on your personal account.
Yes.
What happens? You start getting caught up in the idea that I have to respond to every comment. You start getting caught up in all these different things. So the like button on different posts on different forms of social media, that was kind of invented because there's a little bit of a dopamine hit that you get when
100%.
You see that something that you put up there has been approved of by somebody else. And now you want to see how many people approved of it or who exactly approved of it. And now you start getting into all this stuff and you start thinking about people like these things. People like notice this. They paid attention to it. I feel good about myself. And then if it doesn't get that hit, the lack of dopamine is affecting you.
100%.
Now that I didn't get those likes, did I do something wrong?
Right.
And then what happens? Well, you find yourself in that place where you're grasping for something, you're trying to figure out, and pretty soon you're finding yourself in a place of anxiety. You're finding yourself really sad, upset about things.
It's also like so you're saying you made the comment that it's the source of the comment section is the evil one himself, and as evidence to support that, I would say that social media at its worst endangers one's own perception of their dignity.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you start to value yourself based on how people are interacting with, quote, content you've made. So like not even yourself, content you've made.
Yeah.
And so here's where I want to bring it. Because you talked about the inherent dangers of social media, and you also used the phrase proper preparation. So I think we've sufficiently mentioned some of the dangers. I would also just say that some of the dangers are things that we don't even recognize. So like, yes, there's a danger in self-perception, but there's also the fact that if you spend an hour a day on Instagram scrolling, you probably have a lower attention span, and so you're less capable of like encountering truths and thinking them through. Like there's literally the way that your synapses connect in your brain are affected, like the plasticity of your brain. And so proper preparation has to do with not just like it seems to me, correct me if you think I'm wrong, right? It seems to me that proper preparation to engage in social media is needed on so many different fronts, which is like, are you disciplined enough? Can you limit the amount of time you spend? Do you know who you are as a child of God? Like, are you in a spiritually healthy place? Are you in a psychologically healthy place? And so what do you think that the proper preparation to engage in social media is? Like recognizing that it's in various categories.
Yeah. I think you've hit on a couple of good ones. Acknowledging your own spiritual state, your own emotional state at a particular time. Like, am I able to do this? But I think there's also a understanding what this medium is. If I go on a particular social media platform, what's it doing? When you have the awareness of the way that an algorithm works, I kind of know that there are certain things that are going to be sent my way. And so I should be thinking about that in terms of this is being pushed towards me because I've looked at this before. It's not random. And so I've got to carefully think through what I choose to look at.
Right.
If I carefully think through what I choose to look at, then I'm not going to see things I don't want to see. Right. I also need to understand that what's going on behind the scenes. Well, if I'm going to put something online, I want it to be polished. I want it to be good. I want it to be something that reflects the very best. So most of the pictures that are out there, they're not bad pictures. They're not the ugly picture. They're not the picture that's blurry or out of focus. They're not the picture that's really like dumb or that shows something mundane. It shows something kind of glamorous, kind of exciting. What are the things that people are most likely to share? This is the cool thing that I got to do. They're not going to share a picture of this is me commuting to work. Here's me doing work from home, sitting in my home office in pajamas and getting on a Zoom call and refusing to turn on my camera. They're not going to show that stuff. They're not going to show the things where here's where I was really embarrassed today, or here's the failure that I experienced. They're going to show nothing but success, nothing but the best stuff. That's just human nature. We want to show the good things. But if you're constantly...
And even if you're showing something... So, like, because I'm thinking about how, like, I do think that people are recognizing the need for authenticity. And so because they recognize the need for authenticity, they try and translate it to their social pages if they're a, quote, influencer, right? But even in those situations where they're talking about something that might be difficult, I think it's usually with a positive spin. And I don't mean that as in, like, that they're proud. I just mean that it's like, I encountered this difficulty and here's how I overcame.
Yeah, they're trying to share it for the sake of giving some inspiration. So good motivation, which is fantastic, right? It's all good. Again, though, what we come to is that there's this curated approach to everything. So what you're seeing on social media isn't in the moment. It isn't these things that are happening authentically. It's the way that somebody wants to present the thing that happens. So even if they're going to be critical of themselves, they're still going to present the best part of themselves.
Right.
Even while maybe being self-deprecating.
I love that you said that it's not in the moment, right? It's like, it's almost like it's not real, you know? Like you're not with that person. It's not that social.
Exactly. There's sort of the beauty of I want to be able to share something of myself.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with that. As human beings, we are
so human. That's so human.
As human beings, we are wired for that. However, what happens with the whole media move is that you get sucked into this. Now, here's the thing. This applies beyond social media. This applies to kind of all media and the way that we consume. And if we think about this really truly as consumption, if I'm always watching the news, if I just turn on a news channel and keep the 24-hour cycle on, what I'm going to hear is over and over and over again, the same headlines repeated just by different heads. And so because it's coming out of a different person's face, it starts to feel like there's a lot of people who are talking about this, when really all it is I've had this on a loop because all day long I've been watching this particular news cycle. Nothing new has happened. Nothing new has come up. But all day long I've been watching this news cycle. In a similar way, if I'm on a social media platform and I start to scroll through it, I might see similar posts. It's sort of the same things coming up. The whole idea that something is trending. Well, where is it really trending? It's trending on this device that's in my hand. And this thing that's trending that people are getting traction for, that they're making comments about, or that they're trying to respond to. What is it? And does it have any actual relevance to my life? With the Pope being in the hospital, I was looking for an easy way to find news about the Pope. And so I opened up Apple News on my phone. So like, let's see if there's any up-to-date stuff. And when he was first in the hospital, it was like up to the minute stuff. And then headlines about Pope Francis started to fall out of the top of the feed. And without ever looking, and this is the craziest part, because I had to go in and say, stop showing me anything about like Twitter or social media wars. The number of headlines that are social media trending, or this celebrity is talking about this. And I'm like, I keep hitting, I don't want that. I don't want to see that. I don't want to see it. It's still, so I stopped using Apple News because it's like, it's insane.
Right.
It's just not helpful. Right. But somehow things that are being commented on social media is a news item. But why? What this celebrity said about this thing doesn't make any difference to me. Or the way that this is happening, like, it's not actually close to me in a way that's meaningful. Now, that doesn't mean I shouldn't engage with the world. That doesn't mean that I should just go and live in a cocoon and never engage with humans or anything like that. But there's some stuff out there.
But notably, using social media isn't that.
Yeah. And there's some stuff out there that has absolutely no bearing on my life. So why in the world would I get myself involved in it? Why in the world would I focus my attention there?
It's like, so let me draw a contrast, right, between social media and podcasting. They're both trying to utilize, the digital platform, broadly speaking. And so why do podcasts have, in my opinion, such a higher ceiling, right, as far as benefits go? And it's because, okay, yeah, like, do we bring people onto this podcast that we vehemently disagree with all the time? It's like, no, that's not really what we do.
Nope.
But at least it's long form. You know what I mean? At least it's a conversation where I am free to develop my thoughts in free time, and you are free to develop your thoughts in real time, as opposed to free time, which isn't a phrase, even though I just used it. I'm also free to make mistakes, right? But I'm free to make a mistake in not only in the way I present something, but also potentially in the content itself. And if you were to, we happen to be friends, right? So like, if you were to correct me on something, I wouldn't take it personally, whereas I've spent some time in the comment section because I do social media as a portion of my job, like one of the things that I noticed was that I have like a half of a square inch worth of space on Instagram to leave a comment, like it is a place that actively disencourages you from leaving something of Thank you. See, this is perfect. I did that on purpose, folks. It actively discourages one from leaving anything of any substance, Yeah. And so it's like, it's incredibly, again, this is my opinion, and I recognize the need to use it for a certain amount of things, but it feels incredibly inhuman as opposed to unhuman, which isn't a word.
You're just trying to demonstrate that you know vocabulary. That's really good.
Some words. I know some words. And sometimes I even use them rightly.
So good. I think that podcasts make an impact because they involve people in conversation.
Yeah.
And that's actually what is taken away by social media. Because the conversation is mediated by these other things. When you're on a social media platform or in the comment section on a news thing, or when you're looking through a feed, the feed is it's algorithms working without any human influence. And so it's pushing things at you to suggest this is the thing that you need to be paying attention to. And it may not actually be something that's real or that requires your attention or your time. A podcast, on the other hand, because it's conversation, and maybe the conversation is about a topic that you're interested in. Maybe it's got nothing to do with anything that you've ever thought about. You're listening to people talking, and
not all content is equal, right? Some content is empty.
Yeah. I think
that's also worth noting.
I think most of the internet is empty.
Yeah.
Most of the
it's
internet.
Vacant.
Yeah. There's nothing good about it.
Right.
But,
analogously, Augustine talks about how evil is the privation of good, And it's like, I'm not saying the internet's evil intrinsically, maybe, I don't know.
But on that note of privation, like what are people deprived of right now? They're deprived so often of authentic human contact.
Absolutely. Community.
If they get stuck on social media, they're looking at, I had this experience the other day. I drove past Fairfield U, and there were these two students standing next to each other on the sidewalk. And they're standing next to each other. And there was a third student just a few feet away, standing next to each other. And all three of them are not looking at each other, not engaged in conversation, but together they're all looking at their phones. Now, I'm not being a grumpy old man just complaining that the young people are always looking at their phones. It was this sense of what I really saw there was that they were together, but they were as far apart as they could possibly be.
Absolutely.
Even though they were they weren't separated by more than 8 feet from each other. And two of them were standing like just side by side, practically touching. And I could just sense this isolation from one another, even though they were together. And now, granted, that's me driving past and seeing it. But that was the thing that immediately hit me. We're so often separated. We are so often lost in this electronic world, this virtual world, that we'll lose sight of that reality. A podcast puts you in contact with people who are actually talking to one another.
Right.
And who actually know one another. And so there's this way in which a natural, authentic conversation is happening. And it's almost like, I want to know what that's like. So I'll listen to the podcast and maybe that will teach me something about how to engage in a conversation myself.
So I think it absolutely does. And I think that it does in a particular way with digital natives. Right. So like I can look back on my life previous to listening to podcasts. This is like maybe a broad stroke, but like I look back on my life when I had previous to before having an iPhone, I would say that I was like a relatively normal person. I don't even know if I can still say that about myself, but whatever. But like there was a distinct moment where I got an iPhone in high school, and I remember, this is going to paint me in such a poor light, but boast of your weaknesses, right? I remember when I stopped learning in high school. And it was when I got an iPhone. And yes, is it because instead of paying attention in history class, I watched all 3 of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies that had been out to that point on my iPhone? Yes. Was that worth doing? Also, yes. No, I'm kidding. No, but I distinctly remember when I stopped learning. And so that's not the same thing as like stopping being able to communicate and conversate and interact with in a human way, but that is like a distinctive human experience, the capacity to learn, right, and discuss. And then I had a massive aversion to the Christian faith, and so I was engaging in podcasts because I was trying to learn something, and so like I remember when I really learned how to have some kind of Socratic dialogue, and it was through podcasting. Because people were just talking, and sometimes they disagreed with each other. So I do think that podcasting has that element to it. I'm also going to share a second personal story, and again, this is like, I suppose I share this in the hopes that someone will hear it and potentially realize like a habit in their own life that might be a detriment to them and their family.
Yeah.
This morning. So I don't have an iPhone. You know this because it's incredibly frustrating for you when you text me.
No, I just know that I can't send you certain, like I can't ask you to look at a website.
Right. You can't send me anything that requires a browser.
I have to email that
decision.
To you.
Right. And I made that decision because I knew that not every free moment, but more than I wanted, I was looking at sports articles.
I don't fault you for that decision, by the way.
No, I do think it was the right decision.
I may want you in the moment to look at something so that you can see it right away.
Yeah.
And in that case, I just have to text you a paragraph or something instead of, yeah.
Right. Well, or take a screenshot and send me the picture, but whatever. But the point is, they don't need to know that. But the point is that, so I have this Wise phone, and it prohibits me from getting on a browser. But I still have my last iPhone. And the reason I have it is because I use it as my camera when we record, but also because for my job, for using social media, it is easier to do it via a phone than a computer.
Mm-hmm.
And recently been spending more time on it for work. And this morning, I had like a little bit of a timeline, so I needed to get it in. And I was sitting next to my son, and my son was eating breakfast. And he's eating yogurt with Cheerios and blueberries and strawberries. So he's got his tiny little spoon in his hand. And he starts taking his spoon, and I'm looking at my phone, and he starts banging it on the table. And it took me like 10 seconds to realize what he was doing because I was looking at my phone. And I looked over at him and I said, "Do you want me to pay attention to you?" And he just said, "Yes." And I was like, oh, I can't believe that I've been sitting next to you, looking at my phone instead of interacting with you.
Wow.
Like, you are my son.
Yeah.
And I am prioritizing this stupid Instagram instead of like just talking to you.
Right.
You know? Or just letting you know that like I care enough about you to pay attention to you.
Yeah.
You know? And it's like, okay, it's one thing with strangers. Like those kids on the sidewalk, those college students on the sidewalk, like they should maybe talk to each other, you know? But like maybe they don't know each other, you know?
They're like standing close enough to each other that I assume you don't get in each other's personal space without.
Fair enough. But you know what I mean? But like pals, maybe at best. Maybe best friends. Who knows? I don't know their situation, Father Sam, but I do know my situation with my son, which is like, what a terrible thing, you know, that like I wasn't paying attention to him, you know? And so like, what's the danger of social media? Yeah, it's an echo chamber for sure, you know? And yeah, like it'll, you know, reduce your attention span, but also it like potentially cuts you off from your children, you know, like in like the tangible moment, you know, in the present moment.
It's easy to get caught up in those things. Now, I appreciate you sharing that because it's a really powerful illustration. But also, what an awesome thing you did that you put the phone down and you looked at him and said, "Do you want me to pay attention?" Like you engaged with him. You gave him a vocabulary. He's obviously he's too young to articulate things that way. Yeah. But you let him know that you did hear him and that you saw him, and then that he could engage with you. Like you gave him permission basically to bang his spoon to get your attention.
Right.
And that's a great move too, because how often would it be, "Stop doing that, leave me alone. I need to focus on this." And instead you said to your son, "You're my priority." That's the really important thing.
Thank you for making me feel better about it.
Yeah. No, that's the important thing. Look, we can mess up, but when we correct it, when we move in that direction of making a correction, it's really helpful. I think not only can our use of media devices and things like that. And by the way, this can happen with stuff that has nothing to do with electronics and with media.
Right, sure.
It's easy for us to do this with things that we enjoy doing. I'm going to give more of my time to golf, or like in my case, fly fishing. I'm going to go spend more time doing this stuff that I enjoy instead of paying attention to the people who need me. It's easy to get into that pattern just because I like this other activity. It doesn't have to just be media. It doesn't just have to be electronic stuff. There's lots of ways that we can do this. One of the things, though, that we've got to be alert to is that the screen and the lights on the screen, they actually mess with our brain chemistry. There's a way that this is actually affecting what's going on in us. And so it has a similar addictive hit the way that caffeine or drugs can. Being alert to that.
Which is insane.
Yeah. But being alert to that reality is like, well, that creates then the reason for being really well prepared. Additionally, it's easy to just get into the scrolling. Let's keep moving. But then if you start paying attention to the things that people are saying, one thing that seems very, very common. So there's typical secular social media and there's typical Catholic social media, you might say. All right. So typical secular social media, the comments tend to traffic in outrage. Absolute outrage about different things. So we're going to get really angry about these different things. We're going to be upset about whatever it is. And the more angry your comment is, the more likely it is to get a like or to get some kind of a good response.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, we turn into children throwing tantrums just to get attention.
Right.
I want this attention, so I'm going to let my comments become more and more vulgar or more angry because that's what gets me the attention that I want. Mm. We would never do that in person. We would never do that with a person that we're actually interacting with. But from the safety of our couch, we can hammer out this insane comment or something. So that's one thing. Typical Catholic social media, well, there's basically two versions. The comment section, it's either criticizing somebody for not being Catholic enough or being too Catholic. So like it's the Catholic test. What's how authentically Catholic are you? And how am I, the person leaving the comment, in fact, more Catholic than the Pope and more equipped to speak about this than, accomplished theologians. And then the other version of Catholic social media is what I call just the pious social media, where all the comments are prayer hand emojis and hearts. And then the word amen.
Amen.
And I get a kick out of it. Like it's beautiful. Thank you.
Right.
And
hopefully they're actually praying.
I think the one thing that never really crosses our minds nearly as often as it should, and more of us need to hear this, I think, and I know that it's out there and I know that it's been said in different venues, but maybe no comment is just as good as leaving a comment. Mm-hmm. And that goes for whatever form of social media you're using, whatever your particular feelings are about it. Once upon a time, if you read a newspaper article that was about something that bothered you and you didn't like it, you either filed it away that I don't like that, and you kept that in your mind, and you continued reading newspaper articles and you formed your opinion and you decided whether or not you liked something. Or if you really felt strongly about it, you sat down and you typed out a letter to the editor and you mailed it to the editor, and the editor might run the letter that you wrote. In some cases, you'd have columnists who would debate one another back and forth through their column. They would write to each other, basically. And if you followed that, you got to see something of their discussion.
Right.
There was a way in which I have to own this thing that I'm saying by putting it out there, by writing it. And somebody may choose to respond to the thing that I said. In that case, what you have is actual discourse, authentic human dialogue happening. Mm-hmm. You realize that I'm
with
not,
a certain amount of discipline.
Yeah, because you realize I'm not immune and I'm not anonymous. I can't just say whatever I want. I have to actually deal with the consequences of this thing that I've thought or felt or expressed. And then other times you realize maybe this is just better kept inside. Mm-hmm. Maybe it's better for me not to say this because I don't know enough about it. Or, you know what? If I say that, I might sound like a stark raving lunatic. Mm-hmm. And I don't want that.
Right. I also think there's a certain amount of humility that is required in actual discourse too. Like the recognition that I might actually be wrong about something. Mm-hmm. Even if it's a particular point, like I'm right about the issue at large, but I'm wrong about this detail. Mm-hmm. You know?
In the electronic age, we all think that our opinion is it's always right. And as it happens, I mean, I'm always right about things. Have I made this joke before on the podcast? I'm going to make it again, even though I'm sure I've made it before. I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken.
It was funny both times.
It's such a dumb joke, but I love it. I love it so much.
Right. It's like the equivalent to commenting that Ryan started the fire.
Exactly. It's just a dumb joke and it works. I love it. Anyway, because we're living in this era when the technology available to us makes it possible for all of us to film something. It makes it possible for all of us to share things really quickly and to share things almost right away with a seemingly infinite audience. And now that there's a title for it, to be a content creator, you and I were joking about this the other day. That we're content creators. We're making content, but really, I mean, Matt, come on, man, this isn't content. This is just emptiness. This is just two guys talking about something. Again, you and I happen to be right about the thing that we're talking about, and we are in agreement with one another about it. But this is nothing. This is nothing.
I don't know that this is nothing. I think the content that is nothingness is like the celebrity gossip.
Oh, that's absolute nothingness. You're right. Yes.
That's nothingness. This is like a conversation about something that is substantial in the sense that someone could hopefully listen to this and take something and apply it to their life. It's like this is like potential,
Yeah. There's also okay, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about what you can do, number one, just delete all of your social media accounts. That's the first thing, except for your subscription to The Tangent.
Yes, via whatever podcast platform you prefer,
or YouTube.
We don't care which one it is,
as long as you're subscribed. That's what we really want. But then, okay, for all the time that I spend scrolling through news feeds and just getting engaged in stuff that doesn't really matter, how have I served another person? How have I actually gone out to try to make a genuine difference for somebody? Maybe this is the opportunity to say, I'm going to go volunteer at a soup kitchen for an hour. I'm going to go do something that isn't just about me for a little tiny bit of time.
Right.
And what a value there could be in that. It's not an easy thing to do, but I think it's the right thing to do.
Yeah. No, I mean, well, so what I'm thinking about now is how social media is kind of intrinsically egocentric in the sense that I am being fed by your content,
Yeah.
And so this is that whole idea of the medium is the message, right? Like the medium itself is the thing that you are receiving. So something like the example that Nicholas Carr used, I point back there because the book is back there, and the internet, right? The shallows, what the internet's doing to our brains, is he talks about the difference between a printed document and an electronic document with hyperlinks, and how you would think that those two things are basically identical. Like there's no difference with the exception of the hyperlinks. And so if technology falls under a morally neutral or a neutral technology, it's all the same. But there was a study done that showed that those who read documents with hyperlinks on it absorbed a significantly less of the information in the document because hyperlinks encourage distraction.
Yeah.
You actually think that you would be aiding the person by giving them the source, but all it does is it leads to disjointed reading.
Yeah.
And so what's the actual message of digital documents with hyperlinks? Well, it's decreased absorption of information and higher distraction. And we're talking about hyperlinks. You know what I mean? We're talking about Instagram and Twitter, and they're saying that you get higher distraction from using a document that has a little blue line in it. So how much worse are and so that's why I say well, what's potentially the real message of, there are so many quote real messages of social media, but one of them is a real egocentrism, which is it's about me. And so as far as balancing whether or not it's better to go feed the poor or go on Instagram, I think we're safely in the zone of it's better to feed the poor.
I think, everybody knows that. Everybody understands
and
that.
Everybody knows that. And that's an extreme example, obviously.
Right.
And you know what I mean? But that's how truly social media can actually impact you, is all.
Yeah. Coming back to this question of really being prepared.
What do you think is needed for spiritual preparation?
Well, not
to direct you, but I really want to know that.
Yeah. So even before I get to spiritual preparation, I think understanding that this is the kind of, we're actually talking about the kind of thing that is so weighty, so significant, that it requires a certain level of development and even I would say training before you can use it.
Right.
I don't know if they did this when you were a kid, Matt, but did you ever have an erasable pen?
Yes.
So you remember that there's
and a race I did, Father Sam.
I'm sure you did. But there's a certain
Have you heard me speak?
I disencourage you from speaking. No, there's a developmental stage at which kids are only allowed to use pencils at school. You're going to write in pencil. And then they introduce them to writing in ink, with the idea being that writing in pen is a different sort of a thing. And you need to have a certain level of knowledge about how to write, how to spell, and everything else. And so before we have you writing in something that you can't get rid of, we're going to give you a halfway. We're going to give you ink so you get used to the feel of how a pen is different than a pencil, the physical, tangible touch of it.
I love it.
But also
erasable
so that you
pens, the training wheels of writing.
But really, that's what it is, right? Yeah. It's a real way in which you're learning something about how to use this. But we haven't really done the same thing when it comes to how we use technology and how we teach kids to use technology.
Right.
So often, parents hand their kids their phone, say, "Here," and they give them something. The kids have games on it and everything that they can play.
Yeah.
I was visiting my grandmother, and my cousin's daughter was there, and she's 9, and so she had the phone and she was playing Mad Libs on it. So of course I was giving her words like poop and fart to put in because I'm an adult.
Naturally, as one should.
I'm an adult, and it was cracking her up. She thought it was hysterical.
Right.
I don't know.
It was also cracking you up. You thought
it was cracking me up. I don't know if her parents were as excited about
Right,
the whole
right,
thing,
right,
or like her great grandmother, my grandmother. I don't know if she was as excited about it, but I thought it was hilarious. Okay, so she's there. It's supervised. It's okay. But there's lots of ways that we haven't really taught the kids what's out there, what this device can really do, because it's such a simple thing, because it's so intuitive, because it's so easy to use. We don't necessarily think about what the consequences can be. Unlike a motor vehicle, it's big. It requires a certain size to be able to drive correctly. We understand that certain motor skills need to have been developed. You have to be trained in how to use it. Using a pen, we teach kids how to use the pen and to use it correctly. But we don't necessarily train them in the same way for using technology, the computers and phones and iPads and things like that. Well, the consequence is a really obvious one, that kids, given something that has access to all of the knowledge in the world, are not equipped to use that in a way that is appropriate. What are we seeing in all of our schools? All of our schools, elementary schools, we have the problem of parents feeling like they have to get their kids a smartphone because somehow their kid is going to be behind socially if they don't have this because every other kid has it. But it's actually a really dangerous device. It's basically the equivalent of saying
the deepest irony in that is that you will put your kids behind the 8-ball socially if you give them an iPhone.
Yeah. But if we just substituted cigarettes for iPhone.
Right.
Well, I'm worried that my kid's going to be behind socially if I don't give them cigarettes. We would never do that to a 10-year-old. We would never think that way. But we should be thinking that way because the phone is exactly as addictive. It's like, look at all the studies. It's exactly as addictive. We would never do that with a child. We just wouldn't do it. But we think that it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly okay for us to do this. Putting kids on social media, a medium that they are not yet able to fully understand. Right? We don't want kids going out and doing things because their frontal cortex hasn't developed yet, and we understand that their decision-making capacity is not as strong. They're not as logical yet as they will be eventually. But we're giving them something that can have consequences for the rest of their lives. And we act as though it's perfectly normal. And we just expect them to be able to govern themselves with no real guidance. Like, adults are failing our children. So school systems, parents, like, first off, nobody should be giving their kids a smartphone until at least, I think, senior year 5. We should think of this like getting a driver's license. And you have to be, you have to be trained. to have
all of
one.
these things aside, I mean, I think the what Nick said, Nick Clune, is it Clune or Clooney?
Clooney.
Nick Clooney.
Yeah.
He called our iPhones mobile porn theaters.
Yeah.
And like, I mean, it's like, so think about that. Don't give your kids cigarettes at 10. Replace that phrase with that.
Yeah.
I'm worried that if I don't give my 10-year-old a mobile porn theater, he might be behind socially.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
It's horrifying, right? It's a horrifying thought, and it should be.
Right.
But this is the thing. We don't have to do it. We don't have to engage with this. We don't have to allow this to happen. But we also have to start behaving as though we don't have to. Mm-hmm. And so, like, I'm a big believer. Like, I think that schools should get away from the idea of everybody having a laptop or a device.
Agreed.
There was a time when that was very trendy in education. Even like when you were in high school, that was a big thing. We're going to do iPads for everybody, and that's going to be really cutting edge. And it ended up failing miserably. Like most schools that got on that have gotten away from it because it's not actually easier or better.
Putting a distraction machine in front of a student trying to learn doesn't work.
Exactly. We've really got to get away from that. I also really think that as much as humanly possible, we've got to get away from the idea that our students should be doing the bulk of their work online. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Like, I understand it might not be as eco-friendly as we want, but having them do things on paper is probably the best move.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might require a little bit more time for a teacher to go through each individual paper and mark it up, but it's probably a better thing. Yeah. It's probably the better way.
And the teacher will probably do a better job of grading as well, just for the record.
Yeah. We've got to get back to some things that actually make some sense. I also think that we've got to like create an environment in which we don't feel that we have to respond all the time to everything. This goes beyond education. This is like part of the danger of the technology that we have is that because it's ubiquitous, we always have access to it. Mm-hmm. We tend to think that we have to respond to it immediately. Mm-hmm. I fall into this myself. The other day, it was Friday night. I was like coming back. Where was I Friday? This sounds bad. I don't remember where I was Friday night.
Fair enough.
Whatever I had gone out to do, I was coming home at a reasonable hour, by the way. Just because I don't remember it right now because of this conversation doesn't mean that I was, anyway. I came back at a reasonable hour, but still it was Friday night. Mm-hmm. And without really thinking about it, I opened my phone and I looked at my email. Mm-hmm. And there was an email that had come in. Well, this email came in well after business hours, office hours, and it wasn't about anything that was urgent that like really required me to get back to it right away. Mm-hmm. But there was this thought in my head, I better respond to this.
Right.
Like, it is Friday night, and this has nothing to do with anything that's important. Mm-hmm. You don't need to respond to this. Now, I understand as a priest, I'm basically on call 24/7. Yeah. I get that.
Yeah.
But that wasn't the point. This was not a father.
You're on call 24/7 for things that are necessary.
Right. This was not a thing that I needed to be on call for. And I'm like getting ready to respond. So all of that said, like, I think these are some of the practical things in terms of preparation to use this stuff that we've really got to take into consideration. On a spiritual level, coming back to your question, Matt, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get there.
No, that's okay. That's okay.
But like on a spiritual level, we need to know ourselves in relationship to God and our identity in God's eyes as being primary. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And so what people say about me does not matter as much as how God sees me. What people might think of me out there in the world, what people might think of my reputation is not as important as my identity as a beloved son of God. Who you are is defined not by the number of people who like a post,
Mm-hmm.
it's defined by the way that God loves you and the depth of that love. And we have to be convinced of that first and foremost.
Yeah.
And then
being
in
convinced of it is not the same thing as just knowing it intellectually. Well, Father Sam just said it, so now I know it.
Right.
Good. Now he said it. Now I know it. Good thing I can go on X now. It's like no, you need to like embrace it in your heart.
But this other element of that spiritual preparation is as I do something, as I engage in any activity, am I able to recognize where God might be present, or am I able to keep my feet on the ground? Like, am I able to not get caught up in the whirlwind of stuff? If I'm prone to getting caught up in things that aren't really good for me, or getting, I don't know, sucked into some crazy train of thought that's not helping me, I need to be able to get my feet back on the ground.
Yeah.
Now that takes some practice, and it doesn't mean that we never have that happen.
Yeah. It's also not exclusively spiritual. Like a certain amount of that is psychological.
Yeah, exactly.
Like knowing your own personality.
I very easily can get distracted by any number of different things.
Right. Knowing your personality and your subconscious, like, mental habits.
Yeah. There are some things
Give me
that
the
are going
CP map language, Father Sam. I want it.
There are some things that are going to bother me no matter what. I'm going to find myself reacting to them. What I need to learn is, in those moments when I'm starting to react to them, to be able to notice, first of all, that I'm reacting. Oh,
right.
I'm getting a little agitated here.
Right.
All right. And then to be able to ask myself, is this agitation because there's something that's a problem? Mm-hmm. Like you were saying before, the question comes up, am I what?
Am I in danger? Am I actually in imminent danger?
Right. And there's a difference between I'm in danger and I'm not in danger. There's a difference between I'm upset about something that actually has an impact on my life, or I'm just starting to get upset about something that actually I don't need to pay too much attention to.
Yeah.
Then
there's a certain amount of maturity in discerning the difference between those two things. Do
Absolutely.
I have to pay attention to this, or do I not have to pay attention to this?
There's also that place where I start to say, am I getting upset about this for a just cause? Mm-hmm. Or just because this sort of feeds my ego to be angry about X, Y, or Z? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Then we might look and say, is this something that is being prompted in me by the Holy Spirit, by a spirit of righteousness and goodness? Or is this pride? Is this egotism? Is this something else? And when we can sort of analyze whatever it is that we're thinking, whatever it is that we're feeling in a moment, first off, it's good. And this doesn't only apply to our use of media. This can apply to just about anything. Yeah. When I can recognize, hey, I'm feeling this way, I'm alert to this experience right now, and some of this might be a very real thing. Some of this is just I'm noticing my defenses are coming out. Some of this might be I'm sort of trafficking in outrage, and that's not the thing that I really want to traffic in. That's not the thing that I need. That's not the thing that will actually be helpful. Mm-hmm. So let me think about other things. Let me look at other ways of interacting. Let me figure something else out. Like, what's my alternative?
The other thing is that these things don't all come at once, too. Like there's actual practice needed in order to develop the capacity to ask these questions in the moment of anxiety, in the moment of anger, in the moment of discomfort, you know?
Yeah.
So don't be discouraged is all I'm suggesting, you know? Like if someone hears that and they're like, oh my gosh, that is so much. That's so overwhelming. You know, are you in danger?
Well, that's just it. It is a lot. And
it is a lot. But
this is something also that actually the whole social media environment, and again, it's not to pick on certain platforms, but rather the internet age has done this to us. It's made us think that things are much more immediate and are happening right now, and we have to have something to do right now.
The medium is the message, Father Sam.
And if I don't do something immediately, if I don't do something right now, then I have failed somehow to address it. I have personally failed. I'll give an example. And this might be a controversial example. So I'm going to go ahead and court controversy with this. Years ago, I don't remember what year, but there was a shooting at a gay nightclub.
It was in Miami, right?
I don't know where it was, but it happened. Yes. And Father James Martin put out this thing condemning the U.S. bishops for not responding. Right. And he did that like within an hour of the news breaking that it had happened. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And the problem was that in that first hour, the stories were all over the place. Mm-hmm. It was a nightclub, not a gay nightclub. Mm-hmm. There was a shooting. There was allegedly a shooting. There are reports that this happened.
Right.
James Martin is demanding that the U.S. bishops have failed to respond to a thing that the news was still breaking. It was a developing story. People didn't know what happened. And he's accusing the U.S. bishops of homophobia and all this stuff.
Right.
I was furious reading that.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Because he's leveling an accusation that he has absolutely no background for. This is part of the reason that I don't really hold his material and his commentary in very high regard, because he said that. Mm-hmm. Like, and maybe that's something I need to repent of. I don't think it is, but maybe it is. I'm willing to be convinced that I should repent, but I don't hold his stuff in very high regard because he so clearly went with an agenda instead of any kind of human understanding. Human beings might have not yet heard about this event. Somebody on the other side of the country, a bishop of all people, who's probably not active on social media personally, may not yet have heard about this story. And you're going to condemn some bishop who you don't know for not responding to a thing he doesn't even know about?
Right.
That's not appropriate. But we traffic in outrage, and we tend to think that everything is immediate, that this is happening to me. Mm-hmm. Not this is something that happened several states away, that this happened in a different time zone, in a different country. This happened in a situation that I have no personal connection to. Or if there is a way that I might have a personal connection to it, I don't know what that personal connection is yet. Mm. We've got to be real careful about that. And I think that understanding that, having that in our minds, like, it just gives us sort of a starting point as these things happen, as we go through stuff. Let's just.
I would also point out that tweeting about something is not the same thing as responding to it.
Yeah, right.
You know, so, and I don't mean that as a condemnation in this particular instance, although I happen to be with you on your position.
Yeah.
But like, if something terrible were to happen, you know, in your backyard, basically, you know, in Fairfield County, I would much rather the appropriate individuals go and help as opposed to make a public statement.
Yeah.
You know? So like,
I am guilty though. All right. As I say this stuff.
Plenty of things, Father.
Of plenty of things. Yes, you are correct. You know? But I'm guilty of like changing my profile picture to have that, like, whatever filter was out there, whatever the trending filter was. To say that like I support something.
Yeah.
But you know what? At the end of the day, part of my conversion and part of me saying I don't want social media anymore was realizing that kind of an empty gesture didn't really help. Nor did me throwing out onto social media some sort of commentary. Mm-hmm. I generally didn't get into like the manufactured outrage that's out there, but I've seen posts out there of like somebody who's performatively outraged about something. I'm like, I don't think that's really helping. I go back to G.K. Chesterton.
Mm-hmm.
I think G.K. Chesterton had the exact right response. And this is one of those, we got to get Dale Ahlquist back on here. It's the story that is possibly G.K. Chesterton, possibly not. We can't seem to find the story, but that there was a newspaper that posed the question, what's wrong with the world? And his response was, dear sir, I am.
Right.
Bring it back. Bring it back to the person. Bring it back to the personal. Is this thing that's happening personal to me? Is this thing that's happening the thing that I need to be concerned about? Mm-hmm. Or is it simply one of many things that I could be concerned about? If it's not actually happening right here, then maybe I don't need to worry about it. And not worrying about it doesn't mean that I don't care. It just means like I am properly situating myself in this constellation of things that I can deal with.
Right.
So anyway.
So if I might leave a last comment, just to potentially build on the spiritual preparation.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that a very practical thing someone can do is just evaluate how much time they spend on social media or any given activity and how much time they spend reading the Gospels. And I mean like specifically the Gospels, right? Because when we hear Christ's words, his own words. I mean, I understand, the whole of Scripture is the Word of God, so I'm not making some theological statement, I mean, like some Bibles have Jesus's words in red, but like when you read the Gospels, you learn things not just about him, but he speaks directly to you. And so that would benefit you in recognizing your identity in Christ, as opposed to reading these other words, on whatever platform. So like if all the big grand ideas we've proposed today, are big and grand, something as simple as like spend less time on the internet and spend more time in the Bible, it would be hard for that to do you harm.
Yeah, exactly. And start thinking about what does it mean to respond to something. If my response is I change a profile picture or I click like or I leave a praying hands emoji as a comment, have I responded? Or do I maybe need to like actually go pray?
Right.
Or do I maybe need to say my response is going to be to walk away from this?
Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, man.
I'm not sure what the moral of the story is, but there's probably one, maybe even two.
I think the moral of the story is podcasts are the most acceptable form of social media.
Yes, and you should like and subscribe and share.
Don't give your kids smartphones.
Yeah, that's for sure. Okay, thank you, Father.
Thank you, Matt.
For I learned stuff here, so I appreciate that.
Hey, happy to help. I hope I learned something too.
Impossible. That wasn't it. That wasn't an indictment of your capacity to learn. That was an indictment on my capacity to teach. But I suppose it could go either way. Well, I will see you next week, where we will surely talk about something of great interest.
Tremendous import for the entire world.
That's
that
right.
All people should be paying attention to and responding to.
That's right. 100%.
Oh, man. All right, man.
All right, thanks.
See you later.
See you next week.
Peace.
Bye. Thanks for watching today's video. Let us know what you thought down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe.